Have you ever been on a team that just clicked? You know the feeling, right? Everything flows, ideas are flying, and you get so much more done together than you ever could on your own. But then, you've probably also been on the other kind of team, the one filled with super smart, talented people that just, for some reason, could not get on the same page. Well, today we are going to dive into the hidden science of why that happens. It's a classic quote, and for good reason. It's this exact idea that actually inspired a massive research project at Google. We all kind of know this intuitively, that a great team isn't just a collection of individuals. It becomes something else, something more. That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, if we could just bottle that magic, we could completely transform the way we work. And as it turns out, some really smart people have come incredibly close to doing just that. Look, every manager, every team leader has felt this pain. You do all the work, you assemble what looks like a dream team, people with the perfect resumes, the best skills, the sharpest minds. On paper, they should be unstoppable. But in reality, their performance is all over the place. Sometimes they're amazing, and other times they just fizzle out. And you're left scratching your head wondering why. For decades, the old way of thinking was pretty straightforward. You just hire the most talented people you can find, and then you manage them through a really clear, rigid hierarchy. It was all about individual skills and top-down control. But here's the thing. As work gets more collaborative and way more complex, that model, it just doesn't really work anymore. It's an incomplete picture. So to try and solve this mystery for themselves, Google launched this massive internal study. They called it Project Aristotle. And what they did was analyze hundreds of their own teams, everything from engineering squads to sales groups, to figure out with cold, hard data what actually separated the amazing teams from the just okay ones. They were looking for the secret recipe. And the first thing they found was a huge surprise. All the things we think are super important, like having everyone in the same room, or how senior people are, or even how good each person is at their individual job, well, it turns out none of those things had any significant statistical link to how effective a team was. Wild, right? Okay, so if it wasn't about having a bunch of individual rock stars, or the perfect mix of personalities, then what in the world was it? This is where things get really interesting. Boom! There it is! The secret wasn't in the ingredients, it was in the recipe. It wasn't about the composition of the team, but all about its dynamics. The whole game shifted from just assembling a group of all-stars to actually creating the right environment and the right patterns of interaction. It was all about the how. So what was the absolute number one factor in that how? Psychological safety. This is the bedrock of it all. It's basically a shared belief on the team that it's safe to take risks with each other. Can you ask a question that might sound dumb? Can you pitch a totally off-the-wall idea? Can you admit you made a mistake? On the absolute best teams, the answer to all of those is a huge yes. So if psychological safety is kind of like the soil, then communication patterns are how the team actually grows. And this is where researchers at MIT, led by a guy named Alex Pentland, took this idea of how a team works and figured out a way to actually measure it. They came up with these things called sociometric badges that team members would wear. Now hold on, it's not as creepy as it sounds. They don't record what people are saying. Instead, they capture the metadata of communication. Things like your tone of voice, your body language, how much you talk versus how much you listen, and who you're talking to. They're basically measuring the patterns of interaction, making all those invisible group dynamics totally visible. Okay, so the first key pattern they found is something they call energy. This is just the number and nature of exchanges between people on the team. Think of it like the buzz in the room. Lots of short, quick, back-and-forth interactions, that's a sign of high energy. And, super important, they found that face-to-face communication is by far the most valuable type. The next one is engagement. This measures how that energy is spread around the team. Is one person dominating the whole conversation, or is everybody getting a chance to contribute? You guessed it. The really high-performing teams show a pattern where everyone is connected to everyone else, and the communication flows pretty evenly through the whole group. No one gets left out. And finally, the third piece is exploration. This is all about how much the team talks to the outside world. Great teams don't live in a bubble. They actively go out, they find new ideas and information from other groups, and then they bring those fresh perspectives back to the team. So you might be wondering, how much do these patterns actually matter? Well, the data is pretty staggering. The MIT researchers discovered that 35% of the difference in a team's performance can be explained just by the number of face-to-face exchanges they have. That's it, just that one metric alone. This quote from the lead researcher, Sandy Petland, just hits it perfectly. It feels kind of crazy, right? That the rhythm and the flow of our conversations could be so much more important than the actual words we're saying. But the data doesn't lie. Okay, so the science is absolutely fascinating, but what can you actually do about it? I mean, how do you go from understanding these patterns to actually making your own team better? Well, let's look at this brilliant real-world example from that same MIT research. A bank's call center had this huge performance gap between their teams, and they could not figure out why. The researchers' data showed that the best performing teams had really strong informal chats and networks. So their advice wasn't some new training program. It was way simpler. Schedule everyone on a team to have their coffee break at the same time. The results were absolutely incredible. That one tiny change created more social time, which directly boosted the team's energy and engagement. As you can see, the worst performing teams saw their average call times drop by over 20%. The whole center improved by 8%, which led to a forecasted $15 million annual productivity increase. It's just powerful proof that you can actually engineer better communication. So what can you try? Well, simple exercises can have a huge impact. The Marshmallow Challenge is amazing for seeing how a team works under pressure. An exercise called back-to-back drawing is a really powerful way to show gaps in communication. And putting something like radical candor into practice, which is all about giving feedback that's both direct and kind, that helps build the psychological safety we were just talking about. All of this science really fundamentally changes what it means to be a leader today. The job isn't just about handing out tasks or managing individuals one by one anymore. This shows the shift perfectly. The modern leader moves from being a commander to being a facilitator. They're more like an engineer of group dynamics, actively shaping the environment to encourage psychological safety and to promote those healthy patterns of energy, engagement, and exploration. So here's the bottom line, the big takeaway from all of this. Building a great team is a science, not some mysterious art. It's less about finding the right people and so much more about creating the right interactions. You've got to focus on those measurable patterns of communication. Your job as a leader isn't to have all the answers. It's to create a team that can find them together. And that leaves us with one final question for you to really think about. You don't have to start with a massive overhaul. It can be small. Could you schedule a shared coffee break? Could you just change the seating arrangement in a meeting room? What is the one simple change you can make to improve the communication patterns on your team starting tomorrow?